Hello everyone, and welcome to another video on Sit Down with Sheldon. Now obviously I haven't uploaded that many videos onto this channel as of yet. The only video I've uploaded actually is the collab with Keris Thomas. By the way, if anyone wanted to go and watch part 2 of that video who doesn't follow me on any social media platforms, the video has been out on Keris' channel for a while, so go and check that out. I'll leave a link in the description. But I want to talk about something today that I don't often talk about, or don't talk about enough anyway, I don't think. And I think that this channel is a good opportunity to, I wouldn't say educate people, but just let people know how my life works almost, because for anyone who doesn't know, and may know from the title of the video, I have Asperger's syndrome, which is a form of autism, and I also, as a result of that, suffer from anxiety. So quite severe anxiety. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what it's like living with my condition, how I cope with it, what maybe the symptoms are, and maybe just try and shine some light on the condition and how it affects people, because it may not affect people in the way that you may think it does. So right off the bat, let me say that I was diagnosed autistic in, I believe it was year 1, which would have been when I was around about 6, I want to say 6, 5 or 6. That was, I knew nothing, very little about it at the time. Obviously I was way too young. I actually remember my mum giving me a book called Of Mice and Aliens, which I read, which was a book about a young autistic boy who meets an alien. And it's all about, you know, the feelings that people with autism can express. And, you know, that was obviously very educational, began to shine a light. I've gone through various stages throughout the years of acceptance of autism. I've gone through the, oh God, why do I have this condition? It's horrible. Other times you want to embrace the condition. Now you just learn to live with it, especially as you get to the age that I'm at. But there are still a lot of things which I really do struggle with, and that is something which plays in my mind an awful lot. I should say as well, the way that Asperger's syndrome or autism in general works is that there's a spectrum. So you have high functioning autism down to low functioning autism. So I am very much on the top end of high functioning autism. I'm fairly mild in terms of, you know, Asperger's syndrome usually is quite a high functioning autism. Low functioning autism would be people who struggle with activities such as speaking, you know, severe communication issues, stuff like that. So that's more than the low functioning autism. Obviously I can still hold the conversation, you know, I act, I do all these things on stage, you know, so there's a lot of things which, you know, I can still listen to people, communicate fine with people, you know, I can still function fine. So I am very much on the high end of the spectrum. So as I mentioned, part of my Asperger's syndrome can translate into anxiety. Now what do I mean by that? What kinds of anxiety? Well, oftentimes the way my brain works means that occasionally when I communicate with people, I could be sat in a conversation and I could make a comment. Say I make a random comment and a response is not quite the way I expected it to be. That can mean I fixate on that comment for days, weeks, months. Did I say the right thing? Did I, you know, what could I have done differently? Should I have said this? Should I have done that? You know, was that offensive? Even when most of the time it's not, it's just a throwaway comment. But my brain is constantly working, constantly overanalyzing, constantly overthinking. In a way that kind of serves me well as a performer, because it means that I can, you know, I'm constantly trying to reassess and reevaluate how I can improve things. But in day-to-day life, that is a struggle. I ended up getting flashbacks to things that happened 7, 8, 9 years ago, randomly, and it's little things that'll trigger it. It's almost like PTSD in a way, and obviously I can't compare my situation to PTSD. It's so much worse than that, PTSD to autism. But an example would be back, I believe it was like 2 years ago, I was going through a very, very anxious state leading into an exam, and I walked in front of a car. Because my brain was on another planet. I was thinking completely on another world. I was not in the right frame of mind for anything, and I walked straight out in front of a car without thinking, which is weird for me because usually I massively overanalyze the roads and safety and everything. And yeah, that really scarred me, and I still get flashbacks to that now. That's the more extreme case, but it's other things. For example, I haven't been trick or treating since the age of about 9 or 10, because one year I went to trick or treat on a door, knocked the door, older gentleman opened. I said trick or treat, and they went not today, thank you, and slammed the door in my face, and I never went trick or treating again. Even when I did go out, I refused to knock on doors. It's that innate fear of what happens when something doesn't quite go the way you expected. What happens if a request you make is rejected? It's the fear of the unknown, and that is kind of the common thread throughout the majority of the way that I function with autism. It's a huge fear of the unknown, fear of what's to come. I don't like interacting with strangers. I've got a phobia of the telephone. I got a phobia of answering the door. It is quite severe, where a phone will ring. If it's a number I don't know, I will not answer it, no matter who it is. I cannot pick the phone up because I don't know who's on the other end, and that is where the fear develops, if you get me. Another thing that I have in terms of conversation, which is common amongst people with autism, is not being able to read signals very well. Now, a lot of autistic people struggle to read people's emotions, so they may misconstrue the way that one person is feeling for something else. That could be misconstruing that there isn't romantic feeling when there is. That could be misconstruing that there is romantic feeling when there isn't. It could be misconstruing that someone's sad when they're happy, happy when they're sad. Sarcasm and jokes often go over, the head of autistic people, and they struggle to, unless something is logical and matter of fact, they find it difficult to process that in their heads. I'm not like that. I'm quite easy to pick up sarcasm jokes. In fact, I'm probably make more of it than I do normal conversation. But so that's another symptom of some people with autism. Another thing when communicating is that, especially me, I know, any awkward and tense subject matters, I'll usually walk away, because I usually struggle to actually communicate it, For example, and this is a very silly thing, I know, but, and I don't get this as an actor, I can act this fine, but if there's a situation in a film or a television show where it looks as though there's going to be a consequence, someone's going to be in peril, someone looks as though that they're, going to be found out for something that they've done, and then there'll be an awkward or tense encounter, I'll leave the room. I'll go and get myself a drink, usually excuse myself some way, go to the toilet, because it's just this innate fear, and it's irrational. I know it's irrational, but the thing with autism is oftentimes things which are irrational make up the form of the condition. It's what you consider to be what most people consider to be completely irrational, you can justify in your own brain, but even stuff you can't justify in your own head, it just happens, and there's nothing you can do to control it. I've tried, in the cinema even, I've had awkward and tense situations in the cinema, and I've left, and I've come back. I've given it a minute, gone to the toilet and come back, hoping that the situation would have passed. And that's incredibly stupid, I know, but it's just something that I just can't control. It's just part of, my anxiety. And it's so stupid because it doesn't exist. But in my brain, it's something that I can't control. Now, anyone who knows me particularly well knows that one thing that I had to do growing up, if anyone came up with me through primary or comp, early years of comprehensive school, was I would often grab a ruler or something along those lines, and I would do that with it. And people have always said to me, what the hell is that? How the hell, why do you do it? It was something I picked up at a very early age. It was like a car play set. There was a rubber band thing. Like, it was a thick rubber thing. I have no idea what it was for. It was like a stick that went into something, and I do that with it. And I found that it would help me concentrate. It would trigger the imagination. I always feel like I act better in the house because I've got it in my hands. It makes you feel, it triggers the imagination and keeps my brain stimulated, which is something that I do struggle with, is keeping my brain stimulated. And even now, I don't use them as much, but even now, if you give me one sec. So here I have a balloon stick thing, Bob. I don't use these anywhere near as much as I used to, but occasionally I do have to use it and do it to stimulate my brain. Now, most of the time I had to do that when I was out, and I would do that in school, and obviously I don't do that anymore. because I've learned to manage it. So now I'll only do it very occasionally in the house if I'm really not stimulated in my brain and trying to get something going. I know that makes me probably the most uncool person on planet Earth, but you know, that's what it's about, is being open and honest. And that is really one of the main ways I can concentrate. When I was younger, I learned did it so much that I can now do it while reading. I learned I could do it while reading, I can do it while watching something. I just have this laser focused concentration. I can be doing that in front of my face and still nothing changes for me. So one of the biggest ways that the anxiety Asperger kind of combine to make some difficulties would be when I'm out, say I get on a train. I have very much difficulty with human interaction. I don't like asking for the tickets. I don't like any potential fear. I don't like, you know, I get a fear of people asking me for ID in the cinema. Even though I have ID in my hands, it's still just that fear of everything, and I have no idea why. It's incredibly irrational, but it's always something which kind of followed me throughout the years. Now, a lot of people, anyone who knows me well, or has come into contact with me, may say, well, David, a lot of these traits that you show, a lot of these traits that you're saying you don't show when you're out, you don't show when you're talking to people, that's from years of learning to manage it, and it's also from years of working out how to cope, how to work through it. The one thing I've always tried to do, especially the last few years, since I've really come to grips with what my condition is try and learn how to turn a negative, a perceived negative, I should say, into a positive, and look at what autism and anxiety and Asperger's actually brings out the best of a person. So, for example, I've learned that a lot of my ability for quizzing and intelligence and this thirst for knowledge and learning, that seems to come from an obsessive quality of Asperger's, and that's something I haven't talked about. So let's go on to that. Especially for me, I can't talk for many others because I don't know many others with this trait, but especially for me, and I've read up that it is an autistic trait, is obsession. So if I become interested in something, I will go through a phase where I have to learn everything about it. I have to see everything, I have to watch everything, every documentary, everything that I can find to get all that information, which makes me really good in that subject. Unfortunately, it also means I become obsessed with it for a long time, and then I become bored of that obsession and go on to something else. So examples of this is, I can pretty much tell you 95% of the things that go on in the entirety of the Disney theme parks in Florida. That was because I went to Florida in 2014, went to the Disney parks, loved it, and devoted myself to learning the history, and I spent a year learning a bunch of pointless tat that I didn't need. But I know them now, you know. It's another one is, I'm not sure if people know the drink driving adverts and the speeding adverts and all those adverts. I went through a period of being obsessed with them, so I know all the companies, the adverts, the famous ones, the controversies, everything. I just learned them and picked them up. Which would make me great on an episode of Mastermind, but no, but not a lot of use. But yeah, obsession is something which, you know, I've always struggled with. You know, I went through phases with sports where I was really into football, then I was really into rugby, then I was really into darts, and I was really into WWE, then I was really into basketball, and I just, it's like, but you learn everything about that sport because you can't, otherwise you don't feel complete. And that's something that I know Anne Hegarty, who also has Asperger's syndrome, struggles with. She kind of acts as my inspiration a little bit as a quizzer because of how she's tried to overcome her condition and accept her condition, which I always find incredibly inspiring. But she's always said that she's struggled with, you know, obsession, which is why she said she's never watched Game of Thrones, because she knew that she'd end up trying to learn every single thing about it. And that is essentially me. Just occasionally I have stopped myself trying to learn new things because I knew I would become obsessed with them. And that is something which is, you know, quite an odd trait, but it's something which can actually benefit me in a lot of ways. You know, it does make me quite good at quizzes. Finally, the last point I want to bring up with regards to, you know, anxiety and Asperger's is commands. So if you know me, you may see me just kind of glaring off into the distance, usually in my own world. But one reason for that can sometimes be that I struggle to understand commands. So someone may tell me something, and if they're not entirely specific, with what they're asking me to do, and if I don't understand, I will usually perform the wrong task, or I will stare at this, trying to work out what someone's asking me to do, and I'm too afraid to ask for help, so I kind of just stand there going, yeah, no idea what you're on about there. And that is something which, again, you know, can be very damaging, but it's something which, again, I'm learning to overcome. And that is the one takeaway I want to bring from this video, is that you don't want to, I don't like to use the word overcome, actually, because that's the wrong word to use. I see my autism now as less of a pain and less of a burden, and more of something that I can use to be better and look at the positives, to accentuate things, look at what my Asperger's syndrome helps me with, what the positives I can bring from that is, and then use those to build further. And that is something, you know, it's something which is the obsession thing has given me dance, because I became obsessed with trying to learn tap when I first started. I became obsessed with trying to learn as much about tap as I could, and it's led to me being able to compete internationally and win golds and silvers and all sorts, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. You know, so there is always a positive to take out of things, but what I try and do with the negatives and the things which really impact me is try and learn to manage them, and try and learn how to minimise the stress. I do have a support worker from the school that I attend who has been absolutely incredible with me for the last few years, an emotional wellbeing officer, and she has helped me so much over the last few years in working out how to manage things, working out how best to, you know, work things out, you know. One thing I forgot to mention, actually, just on the topic of school, is that I haven't attended a supply class in the last year, maybe year and a half, because I can't cope. It's the lack of structure, the whole, I have a horrible thing with changes in routine and lacks of structure. When things aren't fully structured and I don't know, you know, not so much when I'm talking, but when I'm in school, if there's a supply teacher, a changing classroom, a changing teacher, that can throw me for a loop completely and send me into complete meltdown. And that is something which, again, I'm slowly learning to manage, but it's, you know, with the GCSE stress I had this year, you know, it was a stress that I didn't need, which is why I ultimately ended up just taking the work and going elsewhere, because I didn't want to face it, because I knew that it was just going to impact me even more than it, you know, it was an unnecessary stress on top of exams, which was stressing me enough as it was. But yeah, so that's something which I've had to deal with, and haven't really overcome. That's the one thing I haven't really been able to overcome yet. I'm hoping I can, you know, hoping as I grow, you know, hopefully the quarantine will do something magical to me, who knows. But that's what I hope to do, is be able to overcome that barrier and get past that, like I've had to do with all my shortcomings. But it's something which you learn from, and something which you use to grow, and that is kind of what I try and accomplish as somebody who has autism as a condition. And yeah, that's it. There are so many different ways that autism impacts me, but I don't want to go on for 95,000 years. It's not just me. The whole thing about autism is no two people are the same. I have many friends who are autistic, and they are completely different to me. They have completely different symptoms, things that I'm good at, they're not, things they're good at, I'm not, and that's something which, you know, so it's what it is worth doing is, if you are interested in learning more about autism and Asperger's as a condition, there are so many websites online. I recommend you go on and look, because it is quite interesting how the mind of an autistic person works. But the one thing I want you to take away from this video, as I've said before, is that the one thing I do get a lot is people telling me that I don't look autistic, that I can still function normally. And yeah, for a lot of people, that is autism. Autism is not, you know, for some people it's a debilitating condition which seriously impacts, you know, on their life. That is certainly true, and I won't dispute that, because it is for a lot of people. But for others, it's something which causes minor shortcomings, which just mentally affects the way that you carry out your life, and it's things that you have to overcome and learn to manage. There's no cure for autism, you know, there's no magical, you know, vaccine, there's no magical antibiotic. It doesn't work like that. You have the condition for life, and so all you can do is learn to cope with it and learn to manage it. and that's what I've tried to do over the years, and that's what I encourage anyone out there who knows someone with a condition or has the condition themselves, is to take the negatives and anything which you don't consider to be, you know, something you consider to be difficult, and try and use it to either overcome it or turn it into a positive. And that's the best way to deal with it from my experience. I've still got a long way to go yet to get into where I need to be. I cannot thank everyone, all my supportive friends and family enough, because they have, your friendship to anyone has been my rock and is the thing which has kept me sane. And friendships are the one thing which most people struggle to make with autism, so I'm so glad that I've been able to get a fantastic support network of friends who have seriously seen me through, and I can't thank everyone enough for that. So that's the end of the video. Sorry that this one's a little bit more personal than other videos, but I think it's important to let people know how an autistic life is led. I try not to let autism define my life. I try and let it accentuate it, but not define it. I am my own person. I'm a aspiring actor and performer who wants to go on, to live a life the same as everybody else, and that's all I can do now. And yeah, that's the way that I learn to cope, is by looking to the future and looking at how I can turn my shortcomings into positives. So thank you everyone, then hopefully the next video will be a little bit more upbeat and light. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do, but yeah, hopefully this has helped anyone who wants to learn a little bit more about the condition or maybe has it themselves, because I do think it's incredibly important to spread the word. So thank you everyone, I hope you've enjoyed, and go and subscribe over on The Sheldon Show for more videos, and onto this channel, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Thanks everyone.